Chicago rarely felt peaceful in November. Rain drifted across the city in thin silver curtains, soft enough to seem harmless, yet cold enough to settle deep inside the bones. Gray clouds swallowed the skyline, while Lake Michigan disappeared beneath layers of mist. For Claire Dawson, rain always meant one thing: another visit, another conversation with a man who could never answer. She parked her aging silver SUV outside St. Michael Memorial Cemetery just after sunrise. The cemetery caretaker greeted her with the same sympathetic nod he had offered every Sunday for the last 3 years. No words. Words had stopped helping long ago. Claire adjusted the bouquet of white lilies resting on the passenger seat before walking toward the northern hillside, where hundreds of polished granite headstones overlooked the city. She knew every step by memory. 112 paces from the entrance. Turn left beneath the ancient oak. Walk past the marble angel. Then, row 9, section D. Michael Dawson, beloved husband. 1980. 2023. Claire knelt before the polished stone, brushing away the damp autumn leaves that had gathered overnight. I got promoted. Her voice was almost a whisper. They finally trusted me with the Belmont Theater restoration. Silence answered. She smiled anyway. You would have laughed. Another silence. They still can't make coffee without burning it. Her smile slowly faded. I still miss you. Rain collected in strands of her chestnut hair as tears quietly blended with the water on her cheeks. 3 years. 1,096 mornings. She still reached across the bed every night, expecting to feel him beside her. She still caught herself buying 2 cups of coffee, still saved his favorite chair, still wore the gold wedding ring hanging from the delicate chain around her neck. People always talked about moving on. Nobody explained how. The cemetery remained perfectly still until she heard engines. Several of them, powerful, expensive, approaching together. Claire frowned. Luxury vehicles rarely visited cemeteries before dawn. She stood and looked toward the entrance. 1, 2, 5, 8 identical black SUVs rolled through the iron gates without stopping. Every vehicle moved with military precision. Every window was dark enough to hide whoever sat inside. The caretaker hurried toward them, waving nervously. The lead SUV never slowed. Claire felt something tighten inside her chest. This wasn't a funeral. It looked more like an invasion. The convoy stopped only 50 yards from Michael's grave. Doors opened simultaneously. Men wearing tailored black overcoats stepped into the rain. Some carried umbrellas. Others carried rifles concealed beneath expensive wool coats. Their movements were disciplined, professional, not bodyguards, soldiers. Then, the final door opened. A tall man stepped onto the wet pavement. He wasn't dressed like the others. His charcoal overcoat fit perfectly over a black Italian suit. No umbrella. Rain soaked his dark hair almost immediately, but he ignored it. His steel-gray eyes surveyed the cemetery with frightening calm. He walked, as though every inch of ground already belonged to him. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. The men naturally formed around him. Claire had never met Alessandro Romano. She recognized him instantly. The newspapers called him many things. The Ghost King, the Untouchable, America's most dangerous mafia boss, a man governments failed to arrest, a man rival families feared speaking about aloud. He stopped directly in front of Michael's grave. Without acknowledging Claire, without looking at the headstone, he simply stared at the earth, as if listening. Claire swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." Her voice shook despite herself. "I think you're mistaken." His eyes slowly lifted toward hers. Cold, measured, unforgettable. "No." His voice remained almost gentle. "I'm exactly where I intended to be." A bodyguard stepped forward, carrying a thick leather folder. Alessandro never looked away from Claire. "What was your husband's full name?" She frowned. "Michael Dawson." "No." The answer came instantly. "So let's try again." Something about the certainty in his voice unsettled her. "His name was Michael Dawson." "He told you that?" Claire's heartbeat quickened. "What?" "He told everyone that." Silence. Rain fell harder. Alessandro slowly removed a worn leather glove before kneeling beside the grave. His fingertips brushed across the engraved letters, almost respectfully. "He was never Michael Dawson." Claire stared. "What are you talking about?" The Mafia Boss looked up. For the first time, there was something almost human inside those icy eyes. Not hatred, not anger, regret. "I hoped," he said quietly, "that I would never have to meet you." Claire took one step backward. "I don't know who you think you are. I know exactly who I am." He stood. "And I know exactly who your husband was." Her stomach twisted. "No, he lied to you." "No, he lied to everyone. My husband is dead." Alessandro didn't answer immediately. Instead, he extended one gloved hand toward the leather folder. His bodyguard placed several photographs inside it. Alessandro handed them to Claire. Old surveillance photographs. Grainy, rain-soaked. A man walking through an airport, another entering a train station, one sitting inside a cafe. Each image had been captured over several years. Claire barely glanced at the first, then froze. The second, her breathing stopped. The third, the bouquet slipped from her fingers. White lilies scattered across the mud. No, the man in every photograph looked exactly like Michael. Older, bearded, different hairstyle, but unmistakably Michael. "No." Her voice cracked. "This isn't possible." Alessandro watched quietly. "I've spent 3 years looking for him." Claire shook her head violently. "No, he died. I watched him die. I buried him. So did someone else." She stared blankly. "What?" He turned toward the grave. "Open it." The cemetery fell completely silent. Claire thought she had misheard. "What?" Alessandro repeated himself, calmly. "Open the grave." Her face drained of color. "No, I'm not asking." 2 men stepped toward the headstone. Claire immediately moved in front of them. "No." One bodyguard reached for her arm. Before he could touch her, Alessandro spoke. "Don't." The man stopped instantly. Claire glared at him through tears. "You have no right." "I know." "Then leave." "I can't." "Why?" His answer came almost like a confession. "Because if I'm right," he said quietly, "everything you've believed for the last 3 years is a lie." The cemetery echoed with distant thunder. Claire felt the world tilting beneath her feet. She wanted to scream, to run, to call the police. Instead, she found herself staring into the eyes of the most feared man in America. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she didn't see cruelty. She saw certainty, the kind that destroys lives. Alessandro removed something from his coat pocket. a gold wedding band, covered in dried mud. He placed it gently atop Michael's headstone. Claire recognized it instantly. It was identical to the one her husband had supposedly been buried wearing. Then Alessandro whispered the words that shattered her entire world. Mrs. Dawson. His voice was almost unbearably calm. I don't believe your husband is buried here. The cemetery remained frozen. No one moved. The rain continued falling between the rows of granite headstones as Claire stared at the identical wedding ring resting on Michael's grave. Her breathing became uneven. Where did you get that? Alessandro answered without hesitation. It belonged to the man you're looking for. Claire immediately shook her head. No, my husband was buried wearing his ring. So the official report claimed. His words were calm, too calm. The ring inside the coffin wasn't gold. Claire frowned. What? It was brass. Silence. The funeral director never noticed because no one checked after the body arrived. Claire's stomach tightened. What are you talking about? Alessandro slowly looked toward one of his men. Show her. The bodyguard opened the leather folder again. This time, he removed copies of official forensic reports, death certificates, funeral transfer documents, medical examiner records. Everything looked authentic until Claire noticed one small detail. The signatures. Every document carried the same coroner's name, Dr. Samuel Price. Except the handwriting wasn't identical. Some signatures slanted left, others right. One used a middle initial, another didn't. Claire whispered, These are forged. Alessandro nodded. Good. She looked up. You noticed. I restore historical documents. Claire replied, automatically. My job depends on recognizing ink differences. Alessandro almost smiled. Exactly why Anthony recommended you. Claire froze. Anthony? He immediately stopped speaking. A rare mistake. You knew Senator Anthony Marino? Alessandro remained silent. That silence answered more than words ever could. Claire's thoughts spun faster than she could control. Anthony Marino, the senator who had supposedly died in a private plane crash 4 years earlier. Michael had admired him. He often quoted his speeches. Sometimes, too often, Claire suddenly remembered countless evenings when Michael insisted on watching congressional hearings involving Anthony Marino. At the time, she thought nothing of it. Now, those memories felt different, calculated. I want to see him. Claire's voice trembled. If you think my husband is alive, take me to him. Alessandro looked at her for a long moment. I wish I could. What does that mean? It means I don't know where he is. Claire blinked. What? I've been hunting him for 3 years. Why? Because he's the only man alive who can stop a war. She stared. I don't understand. You will. He glanced toward the grave once more. But first, you deserve the truth. Within minutes, court-approved emergency authorization arrived. Claire barely understood how. Powerful people made impossible things happen. A cemetery crew arrived carrying excavation equipment. Yellow caution lights illuminated the rain. The caretaker stood silently, making the sign of the cross. Claire couldn't breathe. She wanted someone to stop this. She wanted someone to tell her the Mafia Boss was insane. Instead, city officials quietly signed paperwork. Police officers stepped back. No one argued with Alessandro Romano. The first shovel struck wet earth. Thud. Claire flinched. Another, another. Every sound felt like someone tearing open an old wound. 3 years of grief. 3 years of acceptance. 3 years of talking to a gravestone, all buried beneath that soil. Or, so she'd believed. After nearly 40 minutes, metal struck wood. The coffin. Workers slowly attached lifting straps. Mud dripped from polished mahogany as Claire's knees nearly gave out. She remembered choosing that coffin herself, remembered placing one white rose inside, remembered kissing Michael's forehead one final time. The lid looked untouched, still sealed, still carrying the brass identification plate. Claire whispered, "This can't be happening." The workers stepped back. Nobody spoke. Even the rain seemed quieter. Alessandro removed his gloves. He looked directly at Claire. "I won't open it." She frowned. "What? You will? Why?" "Because if I'm wrong, you deserve to be the last person to remember him. And if you're right," his eyes softened, "you deserve to know." Claire's hands shook uncontrollably as she stepped toward the coffin. She rested trembling fingers against the cold brass latch. Every instinct screamed at her to stop. If she opened it, nothing would ever be the same. She slowly released the first lock, then the second, the third. She couldn't finish. Her strength disappeared. Without a word, Alessandro stepped beside her. He didn't touch her. He didn't touch the coffin. He simply stood close enough that she knew, if she collapsed, he would catch her. She hated herself for noticing. Together, they lifted the lid. It opened slowly. Rainwater dripped across polished wood. Claire looked inside. Her scream echoed across the cemetery. The coffin was empty. No body, no clothing, no jewelry, nothing. Only a single faded envelope resting where Michael's hands should have been. Claire stumbled backward, her entire world shattered in one heartbeat. No, no, no. She fell into the mud, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to understand. 3 years. She had cried over an empty box. One of Alessandro's bodyguards reached toward her. The Mafia Boss raised a single finger. No. Everyone stopped. He walked toward Claire alone. Slowly, carefully, as though approaching a frightened animal. She looked up through tears. "You knew." His expression remained unreadable. "I suspected. You used me." "No. You dug up my husband." "I dug up a lie." Claire struck him across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the cemetery. Every bodyguard reached for a weapon. Alessandro never moved, never reacted, never even blinked. Claire's voice broke. "I buried nothing." "No, you buried hope." The words seemed to hurt him as much as they hurt her. She looked back into the coffin. Only the envelope remained. Her name was written across the front. In handwriting she recognized instantly. Michael's. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside, one photograph, one key, and one sentence, written in blue ink. "Claire, if you're reading this, I'm already the man the world wants dead. Trust no one, not even me." Claire's heart stopped. She turned the photograph over. It showed Michael standing beside another man in front of an old lighthouse on a stormy coastline. The other man's face had been deliberately burned away. Only one detail remained untouched, a distinctive silver signet ring. Claire slowly lifted her eyes. Alessandro wore the exact same ring. For the first time, fear wasn't what she felt. It was confusion, because the photograph proved something impossible. Years before, Michael supposedly died. He had known Alessandro Romano personally, and neither of them had ever told her. Before Claire could speak, one of the bodyguards suddenly pressed a hand to his earpiece. His face went pale. He looked directly at Alessandro. Boss. Alessandro turned. What is it? The man's voice became deadly quiet. We've got movement. Where? The bodyguard swallowed. Inside the cemetery. He slowly raised his pistol. Someone's been watching the exhumation. A distant rifle scope glinted between the trees. Alessandro's eyes instantly locked onto it. His voice dropped to a whisper. Claire. Without taking his eyes off the woods, he stepped directly in front of her. Get down, Claire. Alessandro's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Get down. The words had barely left his lips when the first rifle shot shattered the silence. The bullet struck the granite headstone behind them. Stone exploded into razor-sharp fragments. Claire instinctively screamed as Alessandro wrapped one arm around her waist and threw both of them behind a neighboring marble monument. Another shot. Then another. Glass lanterns lining the cemetery pathways burst apart. The bodyguards reacted instantly. Weapons appeared beneath expensive overcoats as if by magic. Sniper. North tree line, 300 yards. The peaceful cemetery transformed into a battlefield within seconds. Claire's ears rang. She couldn't process what was happening. Only moments earlier, she had learned her husband's grave was empty. Now, someone was trying to kill her, or Alessandro, or both. She looked at the Mafia boss lying beside her. Rain dripped from his dark hair. His breathing remained perfectly steady. His steel-gray eyes calculated every angle without panic, without fear. He wasn't surviving chaos. He belonged in it. Another rifle shot slammed into the marble only inches above Claire's head. She flinched violently. Without thinking, Alessandro pulled her closer against him. His broad shoulder shielded her completely. The movement was instinctive, protective. He never looked at her. His attention remained fixed on the trees. Stay behind me. Claire stared at him. Are they trying to kill you? No. Another bullet struck nearby. They're trying to stop you. One of the bodyguards slid behind the monument. Boss. Thermal drone confirms one sniper. A brief pause. Wait. The man frowned. There are 4 more heat signatures. Alessandro's expression hardened. This wasn't planned. What do you mean? Claire whispered. He finally looked at her. I only told 5 people we were opening this grave. His voice remained calm. Someone betrayed us. Suddenly, a black helicopter roared above the cemetery. Its searchlight cut through the rain like a blade. The sniper fire stopped immediately. Every bodyguard looked upward. What the hell? The helicopter didn't attack. Instead, it hovered above Michael's grave. A metal container dropped by cable. It crashed directly beside the open coffin. The helicopter disappeared into the storm as quickly as it had arrived. Silence returned. Only rain remained. No one moved. Alessandro slowly stood. Every weapon in his security team pointed toward the strange container. It resembled a military evidence case. No markings, no locks, just a single red envelope taped to the lid. Claire noticed something immediately. My name, written across the envelope, in Michael's handwriting. Again, Alessandro glanced at her. You don't have to open it. Claire swallowed. I think I do. She walked forward, despite trembling legs. Every bodyguard watched the surrounding woods. Alessandro remained only one step behind her, close enough to protect, far enough not to invade her space. Claire peeled away the envelope. Inside, another handwritten note. Only one sentence. If Alessandro Romano is standing beside you, he's already too late. Claire looked up. What does this mean? Alessandro's face remained unreadable, but his eyes, something inside them changed. For the first time, she saw uncertainty. They carefully opened the case. Inside rested dozens of cassette tapes, old photographs, a military passport, several burner phones, an encrypted hard drive, and one videotape labeled Watch with Claire. No date, no signature, only those 3 words. Boss. Marco Alessandro's longtime security chief looked uneasy. This could be trapped. It isn't. Claire answered automatically. Everyone turned toward her. She pointed to the tape. If someone wanted us dead, they wouldn't leave instructions. 40 minutes later, the convoy arrived at an abandoned private estate overlooking Lake Michigan. From the outside, it appeared to be another forgotten mansion slowly disappearing into history. Inside, it looked nothing like a mafia headquarters. Hidden beneath the estate lay one of the most sophisticated intelligence centers Claire had ever seen. Massive digital walls, encrypted communications, surveillance feeds from across Chicago, former military officers quietly working beside computer analysts, maps, satellite imagery, international news. Nothing resembled organized crime. It resembled a government agency. Claire looked around in disbelief. I thought. Alessandro removed his wet overcoat. You thought mafia families spent their days counting cash? She didn't answer. He almost smiled. Mos do. You don't? I wage wars. A technician carefully restored the old videotape. Everyone gathered around a projection screen. Claire's heart pounded. The image flickered. Static. Then, a familiar face appeared. Michael, alive, healthy, looking directly into the camera. Claire stopped breathing. Hello, Claire. Her knees nearly gave way. It wasn't old footage. It looked as though he'd recorded it yesterday. If you're watching this, everything has gone wrong. His voice remained calm. Exactly as she remembered. I wanted to tell you the truth, but loving you made me selfish. Claire reached toward the screen. Tears streamed silently down her face. Michael continued. My real name isn't Michael Dawson. My name. The screen suddenly distorted. Static exploded across the room. The image disappeared. Every monitor went black. The lights flickered once, twice. Then, complete darkness. Emergency generators activated seconds later. Red lights filled the underground command center. One technician shouted, "We've been hacked." Another yelled, "Every external network is gone." Marco immediately reached for his weapon. They found us. The projection screen suddenly turned back on, but it no longer showed Michael. Instead, an older man appeared, elegant, silver-haired, perfectly tailored charcoal suit, warm smile, dead eyes. Victor Salvatore. Claire had never met him, yet something about him felt deeply wrong. He smiled directly into the camera. Good evening, Alessandro. The Mafia Boss didn't react. You've become predictable. Victor casually poured himself a glass of wine. I always knew you'd eventually dig up the wrong grave. Claire frowned. Wrong grave? Victor continued. I suppose Claire deserves congratulations. He looked straight into the camera. You've officially become the most valuable woman in America. Claire whispered. What? Victor laughed softly. You still don't know. Alessandro stepped closer to the screen. What do you want? Victor ignored the question. Instead, he looked directly at Claire. Tell me, did Alessandro explain why your husband chose you? Claire looked at Alessandro. He remained silent. Victor smiled wider. I thought not. He leaned forward. The truth is, Michael never married you because he fell in love. Silence. He married you because you were the only person alive capable of hiding something worth billions. Claire's face turned pale. What? Victor nodded slowly. Oh yes, you've been carrying it for years. You just don't remember. The transmission abruptly ended. Every monitor returned to surveillance feeds. Nobody spoke. Claire slowly turned toward Alessandro. Her voice barely existed. What does he mean? The Mafia Boss closed his eyes for several seconds. When he finally opened them, the cold, fearless man she'd met in the cemetery was gone. For the first time, Alessandro Romano looked genuinely afraid. Not for himself. For her. He stepped closer, close enough that only she could hear him. There was one thing. I prayed Michael never told you. Claire's heartbeat thundered. What? Alessandro's jaw tightened. 3 years ago, before your husband disappeared, you gave birth to a daughter. The room fell silent. Claire stared at him, unable to breathe, unable to think. Finally, she whispered the only words her mind could form. I've never been pregnant. Alessandro looked at her with heartbreaking certainty. You don't remember. The words refused to make sense. Claire simply stared. I've never been pregnant. Her voice was barely audible. You have the wrong person. No one in the underground command center moved. Even Marco Rossi, Alessandro's unshakable security chief, lowered his eyes. Alessandro remained silent for several long seconds before speaking. I wish I did. Claire shook her head violently. No, I would remember. You don't forget giving birth. No, I would have known. I would have. Her voice cracked. I would have remembered my own child. Alessandro slowly walked toward one of the massive digital walls. He pressed his palm against a biometric scanner. Several encrypted folders appeared, each marked Project Phoenix. Claire frowned. What is that? The reason your husband disappeared. Another folder opened. Dozens of classified government files. Medical records. Hospital surveillance. Psychological evaluations. Military insignias. Every page carried the same security clearance. Top secret. Claire whispered. This isn't possible. It wasn't supposed to exist. Alessandro answered quietly. One video file remained unopened. Date: September 14, 2022. Nearly 4 years earlier. Alessandro looked at Claire. If you watch this, your life will never return. Claire swallowed. It already hasn't. She nodded. Play it. The security footage filled the screen. A luxury maternity hospital in Boston. Claire immediately recognized herself. Only, she looked different. Her hair was longer. She looked exhausted, pregnant, very pregnant. Claire instinctively stepped backward. No, the woman on screen was unmistakably her. She clutched Michael's hand while nurses hurried beside her. A timestamp confirmed everything. September 14, 2:12 a.m. Michael smiled. He kissed Claire's forehead, exactly the way he always had. Only this time, he whispered something into her ear. There was no audio, but Claire could read his lips. I promise, she'll be safe. Claire's knees buckled. Marco caught her before she collapsed. The footage continued. Doctors rushed Claire into an operating room. Minutes later, the screen cut to another camera. Michael stood alone outside the delivery room, nervous, pacing, looking nothing like the confident man Claire remembered. Then, the hospital lights suddenly failed. Darkness, emergency alarms, doctors running, armed men wearing medical uniforms storming the hallway, gunfire, explosion, patients screaming. Michael pulled a pistol from inside his jacket. Claire gasped. May God, he had never owned a gun. Or, so she'd believed. Michael exchanged fire with the attackers before disappearing into the operating room. The screen went black. Silence consumed the room. Claire couldn't breathe. None of it felt real. It can't be, she whispered. My memories. Alessandro nodded. They're real. They're simply incomplete. He opened another classified document. Operation Lazarus. Psychological Memory Reconstruction Program. Claire frowned. What is this? A military experiment. Alessandro replied. Designed to erase traumatic memories. She looked confused. They can do that? They tried. He corrected. 3 years earlier, Victor Salvatore had secretly financed illegal neurological research. The project's purpose wasn't medicine. It was witness elimination. Instead of killing people, they erased them. Memories, identities, entire lives. Victims continued breathing, but everything dangerous simply disappeared. Claire felt physically ill. No, my memories. Alessandro nodded slowly. They removed 18 months. She stared. 18. He looked directly into her eyes. You don't remember meeting me. You don't remember the war. You don't remember your daughter. You don't remember Michael's real identity. She whispered. Who was he? Alessandro answered quietly. My younger brother. The room fell completely silent. Claire stopped breathing. What? Michael Dawson never existed. His voice trembled for the first time. His real name was Luca Romano. Claire stared at him in disbelief. No, he was my husband. He was also my brother. Alessandro looked away. The only family I had left. Claire felt every memory she'd trusted begin to crumble. Family vacations, Christmas mornings, Sunday breakfasts. Every moment suddenly carried another meaning. Luca had never accidentally avoided discussing his childhood. He'd hidden it. He never introduced her to relatives, because every relative belonged to the Romano family, one of America's most feared mafia dynasties. Alessandro continued. Luca wanted out. He hated what our family had become. He believed Victor Salvatore couldn't be defeated with violence. So, he stole something. Claire looked up. The evidence? No. Alessandro's expression darkened. Our daughter. Claire frowned. Our. He corrected himself immediately. His daughter. Your daughter. Another file appeared. Birth certificate. Infant. Sofia Romano. Mother. Claire Dawson. Father. Luca Romano. Status. Deceased. Claire frowned. No. Alessandro nodded. Also false. She isn't dead. Claire's heartbeat exploded. What? Victor couldn't find her, so he declared her dead. Claire burst into tears. My daughter is alive? I believe so. Where? I don't know. Before anyone could continue, every alarm inside headquarters erupted. Red emergency lights flashed. One technician shouted, "They're inside the perimeter." Marco immediately grabbed his rifle. How? Another voice answered. Someone opened the underground access gate. Security cameras appeared across the massive screens. Masked mercenaries flooded the abandoned railway station above. Dozens, then hundreds. Black tactical uniforms, military-grade weapons, explosive. The attack had already begun. Marco looked horrified. There are too many. Another analyst spoke. Boss, they've got armored vehicles. Alessandro remained perfectly calm. They're not here for me. Claire looked at him. They're here for Sofia. The words echoed through the room. Alessandro turned toward Claire. His expression had completely changed. No longer distant. No longer merely protective. Now, it carried desperation. If Victor reaches you first, he'll find Sofia. Claire whispered, I don't know where she is. He believes you do. But I don't. I know. Another explosion shook the underground bunker. Concrete dust fell from the ceiling. Gunfire erupted above them. Marco looked toward Alessandro. We have maybe 5 minutes. The Mafia boss nodded once, then looked back at Claire. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, he reached inside his coat. He removed an old silver pocket watch. The glass was cracked. The chain stained with dried blood. Luca carried this every day. Claire recognized it instantly. She had given it to Michael on their first wedding anniversary. Alessandro placed it gently into her hands. I promised him that if anything ever happened, I'd protect both of you. Claire's tears flowed freely. He trusted you? He trusted no one. A faint, heartbreaking smile crossed Alessandro's face. Except you. Suddenly, the bunker doors exploded inward. Smoke filled the corridor. Automatic gunfire echoed through the underground tunnels. Marco shouted, They're inside. Mercenaries poured into the hallway. Bullets tore through concrete. Alessandro instinctively stepped in front of Claire. His pistol appeared in one smooth movement. His voice remained calm despite the chaos. Stay behind me. Claire looked at him, not as the monster the newspapers described, not as America's most feared mafia boss, but as a grieving older brother, trying to keep the final promise he'd made to the only family he'd ever loved. The firefight had only just begun. The explosion shook the underground command center so violently that ceiling lights burst overhead. Concrete dust filled the air. Smoke poured through the shattered blast doors. Automatic gunfire echoed down the narrow corridors as Marco Rossi's men formed a defensive line. They're breaching the east tunnel. They've got explosives. Fall back. Mercenaries dressed in black tactical armor flooded the bunker with military precision. They weren't ordinary hired guns. They moved like special forces. Victor Salvatore hadn't sent criminals. He had sent an army. Alessandro calmly loaded a fresh magazine into his pistol. He looked toward Marco. Evacuate Claire. Marco hesitated. And you? I'll buy you time. Claire immediately grabbed Alessandro's arm. No. He turned toward her. His face remained calm despite the chaos surrounding them. They aren't here for me. They're here for you. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. I already lost Luca. His voice nearly broke. I'm not losing his family too. Another explosion ripped through the bunker. The emergency lights flickered. One technician shouted from across the room. They've reached the archives. Alessandro immediately understood. They're after Project Phoenix. Not Claire. Not the evidence. The remaining memory files. If Victor recovered them, Sophia would disappear forever. Claire suddenly remembered something. The silver pocket watch, still clutched tightly in her hand. It had stopped working years ago, or so she thought, as another bullet struck the wall beside them. The watch slipped from her trembling fingers. It hit the floor. The cracked glass shattered completely. Inside, a tiny brass key fell onto the concrete. Everyone froze. Marco picked it up. This wasn't here before. Alessandro stared at it. Then, at the old watch. His eyes widened. Luca, he whispered. You genius. Claire frowned. What? Alessandro smiled. For the first time. A genuine smile. The watch wasn't a keepsake. It was a key. A key to what? He looked directly at her. The place where he hid Sophia. Victor had spent 3 years searching for encrypted files. Bank accounts. Secret vaults. Dead drops. He never imagined Luca would hide the final clue inside the only object Claire refused to throw away. Because he knew she would protect it forever. Without realizing why, Marco rushed to one of the encrypted computers. The brass key fit perfectly into an antique mechanical lock built into the terminal. The screen illuminated. A single video file appeared, recorded exactly 3 years earlier. Luca Romano, alive, holding a newborn baby. Claire's entire body froze. The infant had her eyes. Luca looked exhausted. Behind him, a lighthouse overlooked violent ocean waves. My beautiful Claire. His voice was filled with love. If you're watching this, then Alessandro finally found you. He smiled sadly. I wish I could explain everything, but there isn't enough time. He gently kissed the baby's forehead. This is Sophia, our daughter. Claire collapsed into a chair. Her tears became uncontrollable. Luca continued. Victor can erase memories, but he can't erase love. So I made you forget, because remembering would have gotten you killed. Claire covered her mouth. No, you asked me once if I'd ever keep secrets from you. I lied. I already was. He looked directly into the camera. Claire, I erased myself from your memories to save you. Not because I stopped loving you, but because loving you became the most dangerous thing I'd ever done. Alessandro quietly turned away. Even Marco lowered his head. No one spoke. The room belonged only to Claire. The video continued. If you're seeing this, I'm already dead. Not physically, but the man you married no longer exists. I've lived too many lives, too many names. I can't come home, so someone else has to. Luca looked toward the camera one final time. Brother, if you're watching, I'm asking you for one last impossible favor. Protect Claire. Raise Sophia. And if she ever smiles at you the way she smiled at me, don't run away. Alessandro closed his eyes. A single tear escaped before he quietly wiped it away. The screen suddenly displayed GPS coordinates. A small island off the coast of Maine. An abandoned lighthouse. Sophia's location. Marco immediately printed the coordinates. We've got her. Before anyone could celebrate, Victor's voice echoed through the bunker speakers. Congratulations. Every monitor switched on simultaneously. Victor stood inside the lighthouse, holding the hand of a little girl, 5 years old, dark hair, hazel green eyes, Claire's eyes. Sophia. Victor smiled. I found her first. Claire screamed. Sophia. The little girl looked confused. She couldn't hear her. Victor leaned closer to the camera. I've been waiting for this moment. He gently brushed Sophia's hair aside. Come get your daughter. The transmission ended. 12 hours later, a violent Atlantic storm crashed against the cliffs of a tiny Maine island. The abandoned lighthouse stood alone against the ocean. Black helicopters circled overhead. Dozens of Romano security boats surrounded the coastline. The final battle had begun. Victor waited inside. Sophia sat quietly coloring in a notebook. She had no idea why armed men surrounded the lighthouse. She only knew someone kept telling her that her parents never wanted her. The lighthouse doors exploded inward. Smoke filled the entrance. Marco led the assault. Gunfire echoed through the stone tower. Mercenaries fell one after another. Alessandro fought toward the upper floors with terrifying precision. Claire followed, despite every order to stay behind, because a mother never stops searching for her child. At the top of the lighthouse, Victor stood beside Sophia. A pistol rested against the little girl's shoulder. Claire's heart stopped. Please. Victor smiled. I've waited years to meet you. Claire stepped forward. Take me. Let her go. Victor laughed softly. I already have. He looked at Alessandro. Tell her. Alessandro's expression changed. No. Victor nodded. Tell her who saved Sophia 3 years ago. Claire looked between them. What? Victor smiled. You think Luca hid her? He didn't. He died before he could. Silence. It was Alessandro. Claire slowly turned. The Mafia boss lowered his eyes. I found her, he admitted, quietly. I've been protecting her ever since. Claire couldn't speak. You knew? Every birthday, he whispered. Every Christmas. I watched from a distance. I couldn't let Victor find her. Why didn't you tell me? His answer came almost painfully. Because I promised Luca. Victor suddenly fired. Bang! Alessandro threw himself in front of Claire. The bullet tore through his chest. He collapsed onto one knee. Claire screamed. No. Marco's sniper fired simultaneously. Victor staggered backward. His pistol slipped from his hand. FBI tactical teams stormed the lighthouse seconds later. Victor Salvatore was finally arrested alive. His empire collapsed within hours. Thousands of classified documents hidden inside Project Phoenix exposed corrupt politicians, intelligence officials, judges, billionaires, and organized crime leaders across the country. One of the largest criminal conspiracies in American history officially ended. Months later, Claire stood beside another grave. This time, Luca Romano's. His real name finally engraved in white marble. Sophia held her mother's hand. She was slowly learning the truth. Not all at once, only enough for a little girl to understand. Alessandro approached quietly. No bodyguards, no weapons, only flowers. He placed white lilies beside his brother's grave. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I couldn't save you." The wind carried the words across the cemetery. Claire stepped beside him. "You kept your promise." He looked at her. "I tried." "You didn't just protect Sophia." Claire smiled through tears. "You protected the part of Luca that still lived." For the first time in years, Alessandro allowed himself to believe he deserved peace. 1 year later, a restored lighthouse overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, no longer abandoned. Its beacon shone brightly every night. Inside, Sophia laughed while chasing seagulls across the grass. Claire watched from the porch. Alessandro walked toward her, wearing a charcoal suit. No weapons, no bodyguards, no title. Only a man finally free of war. He stopped beside her. "I used to think loyalty meant dying for the people you love." Claire intertwined her fingers with his. "And now?" He looked toward the ocean, where Sophia was laughing. "Now I know. It means living for them." Claire rested her head against his shoulder. The storm that had stolen everything from them had finally passed. Far out at sea, the lighthouse cut through the darkness, guiding strangers safely home. Just as Luca had hoped, some loves end in tragedy. Some survive through sacrifice. And sometimes, the greatest love story begins only after saying goodbye to the first one. As the light swept across the ocean, Sophia ran toward them, laughing. Alessandro lifted her effortlessly into his arms. For the first time in many years, the Romano family was no longer defined by blood, violence, or secrets. It was defined by choice. And somewhere beyond the waves, beneath the endless horizon, it almost felt as if Luca was finally at peace, knowing the two people he loved most had found their way home together.